James. Yeah. My name is Dr. Eric Peebles. I am the Executive Director of Accessible Alabama, and you've gotten a little bit of our literature and information as one of your handouts. And my co-presenter he is Attorney James Tucker. He is the Director of the State Protection and Advocacy Program in Alabama, which he is given the name Alabama Disability and Advocacy Program out of the University of Alabama School of Law.
Hey Eric, thanks for the introduction. Hello out there in TV land, and I don't know if we have any other introductory comments from our facilitator before Eric kicks it off.
I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. I have a lovely bio that I would love to read about you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm jumping my guns here.
Give you the proper introduction. As he said, this is the last breakout session of the day, so welcome. Mr. Peebles, Eric, is a graduate of the PhD program in rehabilitation at Auburn University. He served the Department of Special Education, Rehabilitation and Counseling in a variety of research and direct instruction roles since August of 2010. Eric also serves on the Board of Directors for the Disability Leadership Coalition of Alabama and was elected co-chair in October 2017. Eric has previously served on the Board of Directors for the Alabama Healthcare Advantage Medicaid Regional Care Organization for the Auburn-Montgomery area. He is also a person with a disability. Eric has spastic cerebral palsy because of an oxygen deprivation during birth. This trauma has severely limited his motor skills to the point of functional quadriplegia. Fiercely independent, Eric has spent his life seeking ways to live independently and to live as close to a normal life as possible. In his role as Executive Director for Accessible Alabama, Eric oversees all administrative functions. He has helped the organization to secure over $750,000 in grants and contracts since co-founding the organization in 2013. Eric integrates these professional skills with a first-person viewpoint on the needs of people with disabilities. So thank you all for being here, and Mr. Peebles, take it away.
Thank you very much.
You are welcome.
And James, do you have anything else to add as far as introductory remarks? Maybe a little plug for the coalition that I didn't do.
I'll just say two things very briefly. Many of you know about the work of ADAP, or the Alabama Disabilities Advocacy Program. Other than our informal advocacy on behalf of individuals and regarding broad systems issues, I would just note that we focus on litigation as well, class action litigation in federal court. For example, we're in the federal prisons case. So if you know of someone who needs help from disability rights lawyers, we want to help. Second of all, with regard to the coalition, I just want to say that I want to also introduce our executive director, Bill Fuller, who is here today with us. Thanks for being here, Bill.
Right.
The coalition works on a broad number of issues with a variety of disability advocates throughout the state. Bill has been especially instrumental in helping the coalition to obtain a seat at the table to deal with the coming of Medicaid managed care. That starts October 1 for 750,000 people in the state of Alabama. Hopefully next year we will be making a presentation about that specific issue. So thanks for being here, Bill, and thanks, Eric, for inviting me to join you today.
Right. And my PR staff forgot to update the bio. In addition to my work with the Disability Leaders Coalition, I also serve on the new iteration of Medicaid managed care in the state, known as Alabama Select, which is a public-private partnership between the Alabama Medicaid Agency and Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Alabama. I chair the Consumer Advisory Committee, which I'll get that, which also comes with a direct appointment to the board of directors for the corporation for the Alabama Select Corporation itself. So we're really deep into the Medicaid managed care transition. We've got a lot of support from our folks at Blue Cross. We've got some really innovative thinkers, which are, really breathing life into a long-standing issue in the state of Alabama, which is clean, which is efficient and effective service delivery for individuals that are on the public health insurance programs, specifically the Medicaid waiver programs. So without any further ado, let's go into the learning objectives for today. At the conclusion of this presentation, participants will gain knowledge about the evolution of the community living movement, share knowledge about the challenges to facilitating community living in Alabama, be introduced to the Accessible Alabama Community Readiness Assessment and its utility as a tool. Beginning a dialogue about needed considerations to promote successful community living for the individual. So as the first part of that, next slide, we need to debate the question of what has brought us to the point where we are. Why is there such an emphasis on the need for community living and pushing towards self-sufficiency to the greatest extent possible for individuals with disabilities and their families? And for that point, we have to look to the importance of case law such as Homestead versus LC. And at this point, this is where I usually invite my esteemed colleagues from the University of Alabama Law School and other things to give a little background of the legal framework and how we got to where we are.
Thanks, Eric. I'll do that. So this is where the lawyer sidekick steps in. Just a little bit of background. What's important about the Supreme Court case Olmstead is that this is a case about how the ADA applies to federal money spent in Alabama. That's really the gist of it. And where we are right now is that the Olmstead case said that for any federal spending, for any program, any public program, then that program has to support individuals to be able to live in the most integrated setting appropriate to their needs. Let me give you a concrete example of what this means in the lives of many people who we may know and work with, who we care about, and who are strong self-advocates. So Olmstead applies to every single home and community-based services, every Hcbs waiver in the state of Alabama. It applies to all 5,260 ID waivers, all E&D waivers, every waiver, and those of you who follow this know that there are about 17 or 18,000 total waivers in the state of Alabama. This is just one example. I'm mentioning it because many of you may also have heard about, or you may be dealing with in your individual and personal or professional lives, what's known as the Hcbs transition rule, which relates to a lot of guidance that's coming out from the federal government telling states what they must do by March of 2022 to make sure that spending on every one of these waivers is in compliance with Olmstead. In other words, is being spent in a manner to support and facilitate the outcome of the most integrated setting. Trying to connect some of the dots here and some things that you may be hearing about, but you may be wondering, why do we have to do this? Why is all of this going on? Olmstead applies much more broadly, but that's the way in which it applies in a very direct way, I think, for probably almost every person attending this conference as a self-advocate, as a professional, as someone who may be supporting a family member or another person to try to gain employment. I mean, that's what the conference is all about. So to close the point, for example, specifically, employment supports and services is a particular identified service that is available through the ID waiver and many other waivers in the state of Alabama. Olmstead says that employment support should be delivered to an eligible individual in the most integrated setting. These dots are connected. This is a way in which we fit into the broader theme of Eric's presentation, access into the community. I hope that's helpful.
Do we need to go into qualifying disability or any of that?
Bottom line, qualifying disability in Alabama. Alabama is one of 3 states, along with Georgia and Florida, where the bottom line is a person has a qualifying disability if the federal courts say that the disability qualifies under the ADA. So most anyone who has obtained an ID waiver would qualify. Most anyone who is receiving a Social Security disability benefit would qualify. There are some peripheral questions about who's eligible, and if you ever had a question, please feel free to contact us.
Go ahead and go on to the next slide.
Yeah, that's kind of the gist.
Oh.
So back to Eric.
We can skip that because James has already got. This is what I really wanted James to go back on.
Okay.
Do you think we need to add anything here?
Okay, I'll say one more thing about this particular provision of the Olmstead decision. It applies if there are 3 conditions present. Treatment professionals determine a placement is appropriate. That's number 1. Person doesn't oppose. In other words, the individual says, I want this help or support. And 3, the placement can be reasonably accommodated. All 3 of those have to apply. If they don't all apply, then the state may have a defense and a lawsuit. But the bottom line is that for the most part, Olmstead says money has to be spent for integrated settings. We'd be happy to discuss any of those 3 particulars with anyone who wants.
Okay, challenges to implementing this in our state. As of 2015, which this is a little bit old, mind you, can anybody fill in that? Can anybody fill in that blank? There are over blank people with not in the state of Alabama, and over blank percentage of those want more community-based housing options. Let's hit the enter key and see what comes up. 4,600 4,600 individuals with disabilities in Alabama who are under 65 and dependent on Medicaid living in nursing homes. That number has gone down somewhat, but for various political reasons, CMS has made it very difficult to get any updated data later than 2015. So basically what this means is these are people that are not of typical nursing home age, but are there because they require a certain level of care, and that level of care cannot be adequately provided for in the community. However, 78% of those folks have stated a preference for learning more information or being provided with information on more community options. With the biggest, I think there's one more, with the biggest portions coming out of Jefferson, Montgomery, and Mobile, Baldwin County. So basically in your major metropolitan areas, I suspect that this has to do with the fact that there are very aggressive independent living centers, either Disability Rights and Resources, the Montgomery Center for Independent Living, and the IOC Mobile in the state, because those counties are served by, in other words, those counties are served by our 3 independent living centers in the state. At the same time, our aging population is growing rapidly, and so, especially in Alabama, by the year 2025, go ahead and hit the enter key. There will be over 1 million people in Alabama over the age of 65. That is 57% increase over the past 20 years by now. As you may imagine, as we increase age, the rate of disability rises dramatically. Nearly 75% of people over the age of 65 report 2 or more chronically disabling conditions, according to 2010 census data. Review of literature. Why this is all about quality of life. The community self-sufficiency is a larger component of a conceptualization of quality of life, meaning that it's typically is a universally important concern to all people. It is a societally shared set of ideas, culturally and personally constructed, which is unique to the individual. It is both culturally and personally constructed. Next slide. Life domains. physical and mental health, family, friends, work, leisure activity, religion, spirituality, living situation, financial security, intimate relationships, and community participation, which includes something next slide, I'll go back, which is very important to another aspect of James, to another aspect of James's court work, which is ensuring voting rights for individuals with disabilities across Alabama. Next slide. Well, personal well-being or life satisfaction generally is an evolutionary role. It deals with the performance of adult roles in the sense that it's functional in the sense that it deals with the performance of adult roles, and it's a predictive capacity, and it's also protective in the sense that we develop these as a mechanism to maintain an equilibrium in our lives. Next slide. The evolution of quality of life in the social sciences it started as a point it started as an outgrowth of population studies. It shifts the focus from large groups of there's been a shift in focus from large groups of population. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, let me ignore that. It starts it shifts. We see a shift in, because of, over time we've seen a shift in focus from group dynamics to the individual. This is really a hot. This is really. It must be contagious. This is really a hot button area in best practice research, in the sense of, and it really gives us as rehabilitation counselors one of the first real metrics where we can measure our effectiveness in the sense that we can see how the effect of our work is impacting the individuals that we work with. Next slide. The quality of life as a construct is very difficult to define because it's sort of a nebulous term that is thrown around by various different subsets. Next slide. However, the research tells us that the quality of life concept can be synthesized into three important domains. Next slide. Mental and physical well-being, which are basic entitlements that Halpern says should be available for all. And then performance of the 8 adult roles, which encompass the ways that an individual interacts with their environment, and lastly, the most subjective of the 3 domains is the sense of personal fulfillment, which is entirely person-centered. And as I said, all these domains build successively upon one another, in the sense that you cannot get to number 3 without numbers 1 and 2 being at least being actualized to at least some extent. Next slide. Mental and physical well-being is broken down into three subtasks, according to the Halpern literature and most other sources, which is food, clothing, and shelter, basic needs, safety from harm, and financial security. For most people with disabilities, this is and as you can see, these things are provided for most people with disabilities through public support programs, such as transfer payments from Social Security, supplemental nutrition benefits from the Department of Agriculture, and subsidies from the rental subsidies from the Department of Housing and Urban Development through the Housing Choice Voucher programs or agency-owned public housing. Next slide. Once those areas are at least partially addressed, we have the performance of the 8 adult roles, and these again are also in succession. And I really want to point this out here, is mobility and community access, which basically means, is the individual able to use transportation effectively? Do they drive? Are they able to negotiate what needs to be done in order to secure a ride if they don't, through publicly available transportation, friends, or whatever other types of informal networks that they have? Because once we get community access, we can then go into the higher order things, such as vocation, career, and employment. Can the individual get to work? Are they able to meet those obligations, and are they in a field that is aligned with their strengths, interests, and abilities? For all those of you that are in the voc rehab world, are are they doing things that are aligned with those three core things, the three core factors that we look at when we're developing an employment goal with a consumer. Because when we're able to succeed in employment, then we can consider leisure and recreation activities, because ideally we then have disposable income, correct? So then we look at, is the individual able to pursue activities of their choice during free time without undue pressure or coercion. And we hope that leisure and recreation activities provide for the cultivation of personal relationships and social networks. Those can be just completely platonic, friendships, or hopefully more romantic interpersonal relationships as well. Moving forward, basically any type of positive, productive involvement. Next slide. All right, educational attainment. Precursor to quality of life, and certainly the previous domain having to do with vocational or career the attainment is predicated on the completion of earning of meaningful high school completion documents, either a diploma or the GED equivalency exam, because that is a precursor for any type of that is a precursor for most types of competitive employment, which is why we're all here. Beyond those in economic self-sufficiency concerns, we return back to personal self-sufficiency and community stability when we talk about spiritual fulfillment. Is the individual able to participate in spiritual activities of their choice without coercion or undue influence? And we do realize that spiritual activities are often a matter of family traditions, so we're not advocating that you abandon religious traditions by your family, but we're saying more. Is the individual aware of the options that are out there and making choices based upon their own volition? And there's the last two components are citizenship, which means that the individual is free to exercise the right to vote without influence or coercion from others, then this is something that James and I talk about very often. And the example that I like to think of is even those with significant intellectual disabilities are entitled to their voting rights based on whatever metric they see fit. For example, I don't care whether an individual will go in and vote for Hillary Clinton just because they like her blue dress, or Donald Trump just because they like his hair style for a given day. Whatever the individual's, whatever the individual's decision-making metric is, regardless of its level of complexity or not, is valid and should be encouraged.
Can I just make 2 quick points, Eric?
Yes, please.
One, many of you may have met ADAP's voting rights advocate, Tate Fall, downstairs, who was staffing our table. I hope you got to see her and meet her, and that you may be connected to some of the voting rev-up activities. She's going to be traveling all over the state next week talking about voting. Maybe we could get her on the show sometime, Alex. And second of all, I want to go back to Eric's bullet regarding spiritual fulfillment. Again, to give you just a concrete example. Within the last month, I was at an ID waiver meeting for someone who our office represents. He said, you know, I live just down the block from where my mama goes to church, but my staff takes me to a different church. Why can't I go to church with my mama? We sat down at the person-centered planning meeting and got that straightened out. Basically, the plan now is that my client will be going to church with his mama. And that's just a concrete example of the way that ADAP tries to advocate with our clients with regard to just one example of the way that these issues sometimes play out in very concrete ways that many of you may have seen, whichever side of the table you sit on in an individualized planning process. Thanks, Eric.
Eric, I'm sorry, if I can throw another shout out. Tate will be at Disability Rights and Resources this Tuesday, July 16th, from 10 to 2 o'clock. Please come. You're all welcome. We're going to have a great activity, lots of voting rights, and lots of fun. So, sorry about that. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, you're perfectly fine. Next, and the last of these is social responsibility, and it has meaning the individual has a clear concept of right and wrong, and understands their obligation to obey civil authorities. Next slide. The last piece, and this is the highest domain that is most subjective, as I said earlier, personal fulfillment, which involves happiness, satisfaction, and a sense of general well-being, and the happiness burst is a transient status that reflects current events. Satisfaction is something that occurs over a longer period of time, which usually is typically related to the performance of one of the 8 specific adult roles that we discussed on the previous slides. And then the last and highest order of the personal fulfillment piece is the center of general well-being, which is an enduring sense of satisfaction with a person's quality of life that is irrespective of the current events or things happening around them. Next slide. And where does this all lead? My organization, Accessible Alabama, as part of a grant from our Developmental Disabilities Council, which many of you are familiar with, which is a federally mandated organization, state council that protects the rights of individuals with developmental disabilities and their family, and advocates on their behalf for policies and programs. So, as part of what our DD Council does, they fund new innovative projects that improve the quality of life for individuals with disabilities. So, next slide. So, as part of our that the individual provides as far as the area that they wish to reside. So, there's a link to the assessment at the bottom of the presentation. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it's 7 screens, but can we take a look at at least the first page?
And do we know if the PowerPoint is on the conference website?
I sent it to Byron, so it should be.
Great.
If I can't get it to pull up the link.
It's on your website too.
The link is there. The link is there. So we're all good. So basically, what we've done is based upon zip codes and preferences that the individual indicates on the assessment, we then provide you at the end links to, based on the zip code. For example, we just added functionality that will direct you to or give contact information for the local public housing authority in your area, the Department of Human Resources for the access to federally funded supplemental nutrition benefits, the various subunits of the Alabama Department of Rehabilitation Services, both the child and adult services for vocational rehabilitation, and what I'm most pleased of is within the next week or so, we're going to be able to link you up with available rental units in your community based upon the zip code entered, and all these will be communities that are willing to participate and accept subsidy from the Housing Choice Voucher programs. So that's a big step forward. That's a big step forward for us in the state of Alabama that we've been trying to achieve for several years, is our central repository for all this information. Other elements that are there are transportation providers, durable medical equipment providers, and other state agencies, as well as such as James's folks and the Department of Senior Services, etc. Next slide. Okay. No. Oh yeah, there we go. These are just resources from our other partners. James's website is there, ACDD's website is there, and other other housing resources and community independence resources for individuals with disabilities and their supports. Next slide. Oh, and I have to do this because, and here is another technology resource from the Alabama STAR program, which is the state of Alabama's technology assistance program, which serves two main functions. Will loan various adaptive equipment and will also provide low interest loans for individuals that need to purchase assistive technology of any kind, whether it be anything from computers and speech synthesizers to certain accessible vehicles, as long as they can fit under the finance guideline. Next slide. And once again, here's our contact information. And thank you for your attention today. And if there's any questions or things that you'd like to offer for the good of the group, now is the time to do it.
Where would you find that assessment?
It's going to be accessible, alabama.org/assessment.
And does that encompass more than just housing?
Oh,
that...
like I said, it looks at all the prerequisites that most of the prerequisites that research has shown are help to promote community self-sufficiency. So we look at transportation, access to activities, the level of proficiency with activities of daily living. So that several, like I said, we use the framework that I detailed early in the presentation to develop the assessment that it tries to address all the domains.
And are you continuing to build that out?
Oh, like I said, as far as for the resource information, yeah, we're constantly updating the back end. We're constantly updating the back end to provide community-specific, location-specific resources for the end user. And if there's things that I've missed or things that we've missed, feel free to email me and let me know, or email us and let me know. Because the other thing I forgot to mention as far as available resources is it also details the utility substance utility subsidies and assistance avenues as well.
Quick question. I know we're running out of time, but and I probably talked about this afterwards. But on that, you said what you're launching next week. You've partnered with some rental communities that are opening up the doors to accept federal subsidies for payment of rental. So are you
Right.
talking like is it in only certain counties? Are we looking? Is it just Jefferson? Is it?
We're populating this function through the Alabama Housing Finance Agency's statewide database. So there are funded projects in nearly all 67 counties across the state.
And obviously they're very accessible.
Right, but the question becomes with that is how long are the waiting lists? Do they have availability? Do they have current availability? And to the best that we can, our staff is in the process of contacting the individual communities to see what waiting list status is, and we're going to include some type of availability metric on the resources, on those particular sets of resources in the very near future. We're just trying to work through conceptually what is the easiest way to provide as close to real-time information as we can, because though that particular metric is subject to fluctuation almost daily.
Eric, can I say a quick word about housing also in response to the question? People may or may not be aware that almost any public housing authority is required to have a dedicated set aside of a certain number or percentage of units that are available for persons with disabilities. Sometimes those available housing options go unfilled, and so that's one option to think about. Also, in terms of individual advocacy, Eric mentioned that there may be a waiting list. Sometimes for an individual with a disability, he or she might be able to make a jump in terms of priority on that waiting list. So I wanted to just throw out a couple of things to think about. Also just wanted to share with everyone, Alex, while we've been doing this, one of our viewers sent a note and texted that, I don't know if I've got this correct, is today your birthday, Eric?
Somebody said that.
Happy birthday, Eric. Can we sing happy birthday to Eric? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Eric. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you very much, and I have a pretty good idea of which member of your staff.
I'll whisper it to you later.
Right, and you can tell her thank you very much at your
I'm
next.
not committing, him or her.
I can. All right. So anyway, thank you very much. Next slide. I think that's it. Thank you very much. Questions? Questions? We will be around for a little bit. If there's things that need to be